Welcome back to SpeakNest English Podcast Zone, the podcast where English becomes easy, fun, and useful. In this episode, we'll learn how to share your opinions, how to agree and disagree politely, how to express what you think clearly, and how to sound smart without sounding rude. Whether you're a student, a job seeker, or just chatting with friends, this is an essential skill. Let's dive right in.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into expressing opinions in English.
Right, using all those great sources you sent us.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Everyone has opinions. Could be about pizza, could be about, your study habits.
Or much bigger things, obviously.
Yeah.
Climate change, politics, you name it.
Exactly. But what the sources really zero in on is how you state those opinions in English. It's not just words.
Mm-hmm. It genuinely affects how people take it, how they understand you. Big time.
Totally changes the reception. Think about saying, that's a terrible idea.
Whoa, yeah. Versus maybe, I wonder if we've considered the potential challenges there.
Same basic point, totally different feel. One shuts things down, the other maybe opens the door.
Precisely. So that's kind of our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? Looking at the sources to figure out how
to say what you think clearly, but also, respectfully. Finding those practical tips in the material you shared.
Okay, so digging in. One thing that pops up again and again is this idea of hedging language.
Right, for opinions you're maybe less sure about or ones that might be a bit sensitive.
Yeah, it's not about being wishy-washy, necessarily. The sources frame it more as inviting discussion.
Making it sound less like a final judgment. Using phrases like, what it seems to me, or I kind of think.
Exactly those. Or modals like, this might be an issue, or we could try this.
Mm-hmm.
Several examples show that.
And that signals it's your take, not some absolute truth. Right. It makes you sound more approachable.
Yeah, less confrontational. The sources actually have examples, side by side. Blunt statement, conversation over.
But a hedged one
often gets the other person thinking, maybe even sharing their perspective. It creates a bit of space.
Okay, so hedging is key for diplomacy. But what about when you are sure and you want to convey that?
Yeah. The sources talk about boosters, too. Sometimes you need that conviction.
Like using adverbs clearly, obviously. Or saying, I strongly believe.
Those are the ones, but, and this is the interesting part, the sources really stress using them carefully. Well, overuse them, and apparently you can come across as rigid, dogmatic, almost.
Okay. So it's a balancing act. Not too hedged, not too boosted. Finding the right tool for the job.
That seems to be the core message, yeah. Finding that sweet spot.
Something else that stood out for me was the structure. How you actually, build the sentence or the point.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more.
Starting with the why before the what. So instead of just, I don't like this plan.
You'd say something like,
maybe, well, given our deadline is so tight, I'm a bit concerned this plan might take too much time. You give the reason first.
Right. You provide the context. That makes sense. The sources suggest that kind of prepares the listener.
Yeah. So they're less likely to just immediately put their defenses up.
And more likely to actually, think about your reasoning, not just react to the opinion itself.
And it was kind of surprising, the mention of tone and nonverbal stuff.
Oh, yeah. Even when the focus is on the words.
Apparently so. The sources mention how even if you use polite words, a really sharp tone can just undermine it all.
Huh. So it's not just what you say or how you structure it.
But the whole delivery package, yeah. It adds another layer to communicating clearly and respectfully.
It really shows how complex this seemingly simple act of giving an opinion can be.
Okay, so let's try and quickly sum up the main idea from these sources.
Go for it.
Basically, expressing opinions well in English, clearly, respectfully, it's a real skill. It relies on specific things.
Like knowing when to hedge, when to boost, how to structure your point.
And even being mindful of your tone. It's a whole toolkit.
And how you use those tools directly shapes how you're understood, how people see your point.
And whether the conversation actually goes anywhere productive, it really, really matters.
It's definitely a skill worth thinking about, worth practicing. It's not about hiding your opinion.
No, not at all. More about presenting it effectively in a way that respects your view and the listener.
Yeah, creating that possibility for connection, or at least understanding.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about the opinions you hold. Big ones, small ones.
Ones you're sure of, ones you're maybe less sure about.
And consider these techniques from the sources we discussed, maybe hedging, maybe explaining your why first.
How might just trying one of those things consciously, how might that change your very next conversation?
Just something to mull over. Digging into something really practical from our sources. It's all about expressing opinions in English.
Right. And specifically, how to agree with someone.
Yeah.
Politely, that is.
Yeah, politely. Because just saying yes isn't always quite enough, is it?
It might seem basic, but the material we've looked at actually lays out a whole range of ways to agree.
Yeah.
And each one has a slightly different, feel.
Exactly, a different function in the conversation. So our mission today for this deep dive, it's not just about listing off phrases. We want to kind of unpack why having these different ways to agree is actually really useful for you.
How it makes your interactions smoother, more effective.
Totally. So let's get into it. The source material gives us this pretty handy list of common phrases, okay, beyond just, the standard I agree. What else does it offer?
Well, what's interesting is how these phrases let you add different layers of meaning. Or intensity, even.
Intensity, okay.
Yeah. So the source points out things like absolutely and exactly.
Okay, absolutely. That feels quite strong, right? Like zero hesitation.
Definitely.
If someone says, wow, that presentation was great, you might go, absolutely.
Precisely. Yeah, it's a strong affirmation. You're completely on board with the statement's truth or value.
Gotcha. And exactly. How's that different?
Exactly.
Right.
Is similar in strength, maybe, but it often comes when someone has just voiced a point you were thinking or, expressed something perfectly.
Like they've hit the nail right on the head.
Exactly. See?
Right.
Like that. So if you're discussing something and someone says, so the key issue is X, and that's precisely what you think, you'd say exactly. It confirms that precision or insight.
Okay, that makes sense. So absolutely. Strong general agreement, exactly, confirms accuracy or shared thought. What about confirming something is correct, but maybe a bit less intense? The source said, that's right.
Yeah, that's right, is kind of your everyday workhorse phrase for agreement. It just confirms, yep, what you said is correct. It's pretty neutral, very versatile.
Okay.
And the source also gives us a slightly stronger version. You're totally right.
You're totally right. Okay, that feels a bit warmer, maybe. More personal than just, that's right.
I think so, too. It adds that intensifier totally, and it feels like you're really affirming them, the person, and their correctness.
Yeah, like if a friend points out something obvious you miss, oh, you're totally right. How did I not see that?
Exactly. It's got that slightly more informal personal energy.
Okay, so we have strong affirmation, confirmation of accuracy, and then this more personal affirmation. What else? The source listed one about feelings?
Yes, I feel the same way.
No, that one is different. You wouldn't use that for facts. Like, is London the capital of the UK? I feel the same way. That'd be weird.
Right, no. It's specifically for when someone shares an emotion, an opinion, a personal perspective.
So if someone says, ugh, this commute is driving me crazy.
Then you might say, oh, I feel the same way. It's about connecting on that shared feeling or experience.
It builds rapport, right, through shared sentiment.
It really does. It shifts the agreement from factual validation to emotional resonance. And that, I think, is the main point here from the source material. That while, sure, I agree, works, having this whole palette, absolutely, exactly, that's right, you're totally right, I feel the same way, it gives you choices.
Flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility. So you can pick the phrase that really fits the specific nuance of that moment, the intensity you feel, the context.
Then using the right one makes your communication feel so much more, real,
right,
authentic.
More dynamic.
You're not just a robot saying agree. You're showing how you agree because they were spot on or because you share their frustration or whatever it is.
It definitely makes you sound more engaged, more natural when you're speaking English.
It helps you connect better, basically, conveying the type of agreement.
Precisely. It's a subtle but powerful tool.
So wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? It's that understanding these subtle differences, even in simple agreement phrases.
It gives you more tools.
Exactly. More tools to express yourself clearly and, importantly, to build better connections when you talk to people.
Yeah, it moves agreement from just a transaction to, a meaningful interaction.
So here's something to think about. Next time you agree with someone, pause for just a second. Think about how you agree. Is it exactly? Or is it more, I feel the same way? How does choosing that specific phrase not just make your English sound better, but actually maybe strengthen the bond with the person you're talking to?
Good question. Something to notice in your own conversations. Oh, today we're jumping into something really foundational. It kind of touches every conversation you have, really.
We're looking at expressing opinions clearly, effectively. Got some interesting material here.
Yeah, a good stack. And our mission, I guess, is to pull out the really useful bits.
Exactly. The core phrases, the examples from these sources.
So you can feel, a bit more equipped, more confident sharing your view.
Whatever the context, yeah. Because it's about having those tools ready.
Right. And it might sound basic expressing an opinion, but these sources suggest there's real nuance in how you start.
That's a key point they make. Just knowing the right opening phrase can apparently make a big difference.
Boosts clarity, confidence, that sort of thing.
For sure. And while everyone knows, the absolute basics, like I think.
Yeah, the default.
Right. The sources really dig into a richer set of tools. Different situations, different levels of certainty. They need different approaches.
Okay, so it's not just one size fits all. The material we looked at, it introduces phrases that add a bit more subtlety.
Like instead of just flat out, I think, or in my opinion, which sometimes, maybe, can sound a bit final.
Or even blunt, yeah.
The sources talk about variations, like, it seems to me that.
Yeah, it seems to me.
Yeah.
How does that change things?
Well, it suggests a slightly less definitive stance. Maybe it invites more discussion, shows you're still considering things.
So it softens it a little.
Yeah, the examples show it still states your view clearly, but maybe in a more open way.
Got it. So if we're talking about, say, learning a skill, instead of, I think reading is best.
You might try, well, it seems to me that reading offers a unique kind of depth.
Feels a bit more considered, yeah. Less like a declaration.
Precisely. And the material also covers phrases that signal where your opinion is coming from.
Like based on specific knowledge.
Or just your particular viewpoint, yeah. Things like, from my perspective, or from where I stand.
Okay, from my perspective? How does that help?
It frames it. It explicitly says, this is my viewpoint, based on my experience or position. Makes it personal, but clear.
Right. Like, from my perspective as a remote worker, online classes offer amazing flexibility.
Exactly. You link the opinion to your context. The sources suggest that makes it more relatable, or at least understandable.
Yeah, people see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Well, there are also phrases for when you want to offer an opinion, but also acknowledge, the other side or the complexity.
Disagreeing politely.
Or just showing you've heard the other points. Think about, while I understand X, I would argue Y.
While I understand X, I would argue Y.
According to the material, that structure is great. It shows you've processed the other view before presenting your own counterargument.
Okay, let's try an example. Someone says, online classes lack face-to-face connection.
You could respond, yeah, while I understand the value of face-to-face interaction, I would argue that online platforms really excel in accessibility and flexible scheduling.
Nice. It validates their point first. Shows you're listening.
Exactly. So these variations, it seems to me, from my perspective, while I understand X, I would argue Y, they aren't just different ways to say, I think.
No, they're doing different jobs.
Right. They're distinct tools. They let you be more precise about the nature of your opinion, your certainty level, your relationship to the conversation.
So they're like voice shapers almost, as much as voice starters.
That's a great way to put it. They give your opinion, form, and context right from the get-go.
And that's the core insight here, isn't it?
It really is. Getting a handle on this range of opening phrases empowers you, not just to state an opinion, but to articulate your specific viewpoint with more clarity, more nuance.
More effectiveness, depending on the situation.
Yes. It helps you tailor how you share your thoughts. Find the right on-ramp for your idea.
Whether it's tentative or a really solid argument you've got.
So yeah, wrapping up, mastering these simple starters, these clear opening phrases we've talked about, it's really valuable.
Definitely gives you more tools in your communication toolkit.
And it connects back to your journey, Mastering these simple starters empowers you to share your perspective more fully, to really find your voice.
Makes sense.
So maybe a final thought for you to consider is this. If these simple phrases are like voice starters, well, what powerful thoughts, what perspectives are just waiting inside you?
Waiting to be shared.
Yeah. Once you feel you have the right tools, the right words to express them, give these different phrases a try, see what happens.
Practice and discover that range. Good takeaway.
Definitely something to think about. Okay, so let's unpack this. We're diving into something most of us run into, right? Expressing opinions.
Yeah, especially when, your opinion isn't quite the same as someone else's.
Exactly. Thinking about how to share a different view without making it sound like you're starting a fight. It's a bit of a communication tightrope, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And doing that respectfully and clearly, especially in English, it adds layers of nuance. It takes a certain skill, I think, and awareness of how your words might land.
Totally. So our source material today, it's really this fantastic guide on exactly that, how to disagree politely. Yeah, it kind of breaks down why it can be tricky and gives us, practical strategies, actual phrases.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive, let's pull out the really valuable nuggets from these sources, not just a list, but the thinking behind them.
Helping people navigate those conversations smoothly.
Exactly. We're talking about insights, tools, things you can use, immediately.
And what's really interesting, I think, from the material is the way it frames it, the perspective shift.
How so?
Well, it presents disagreement not really as a conflict, something to be won.
Okay.
But more simply as just sharing different thoughts. The tricky part is how we package those thoughts.
So they're received openly, not defensively.
Precisely.
That's the core idea, yeah. But the sources point out, actually doing that, it can feel tricky. Just blurting out, well, it can sound a bit abrupt, dismissive maybe.
Right, so the guidance really zeroes in on softening that.
Yeah.
Making it gentler.
How does it suggest we do that? What are some key strategies?
Well, a big one is starting by acknowledging the other person's point before you jump in with yours.
Ah, okay.
Using phrases like, I see your point, or maybe that's an interesting perspective. They act like bridges.
Right. Showing you've actually listened. That makes sense. It probably makes your own point easier to hear then.
Exactly. So instead of just, I disagree, it's more like, okay, I see your point, but I tend to think.
Or, that's interesting, however my feeling is. That kind of thing.
Precisely. And the material also talks about using less direct language.
Okay.
Employing things like modal verbs, might, could, maybe, or adverbs that sort of reduce the force.
So avoiding a blunt, you're wrong.
Definitely. Or even a flat, I don't agree. Instead, maybe try softer phrasing.
I'm not sure I entirely agree with that.
Yes, exactly. Or, I don't really see it that way.
That not sure or really kind of cushions it, doesn't it?
It does. It signals that your view is perhaps just your perspective, not some absolute truth,
Okay. What else?
Another really effective way highlighted is to explicitly state your respect for their opinion first.
Like saying it outright.
Yeah. Something like, look, I respect your opinion on this, but I actually have a slightly different view.
Which deals head on with the idea that disagreement can feel personal and sort of softens that potential impact right away.
Exactly right. And the guidance also mentions adding little phrases that show you're being sincere or that it's your personal take.
Like
things like adding, to be honest, or personally, I feel. It makes it feel less like you're challenging them.
Right.
And more like you're just sharing your honest thoughts.
Okay, I see. So I don't really agree, to be honest. Feels way less confrontational than just, I don't agree.
Completely.
Yeah.
It's the same basic message, but the delivery changes everything.
And these aren't just random polite words thrown in.
No. The source material explains why they work. It's about prioritizing the relationship.
Okay.
And keeping the conversation flowing. Rather than just forcefully stating your position, you're managing the impact.
Right. The guidance actually gives a simple example that sort of brings it all together.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine someone says, I think the best way to stay healthy is just to run every single day.
Okay. And let's say you think, based on what you know, that maybe weightlifting is more effective overall.
Right. The direct, maybe impolite way. That's wrong. You should lift weights.
Pretty blunt.
Yeah. But using these strategies we've talked about, from the sources, you could say something like, that's an interesting point about running, and I definitely see why you'd think that. Personally, though, I tend to believe weightlifting might help more for overall health.
See the difference? That second one acknowledges, it hedges with, tend to believe, and might help, and frames it as a personal belief.
Yeah, it totally changes it. It turns what could be a clash into more of an exploration of different ideas.
Exactly.
So there you have it. Disagreeing respectfully, particularly in English, isn't really about not expressing yourself.
No, not at all.
It's about using these kinds of strategies, these phrases, to share your thoughts while still showing respect for the other person.
And the guidance from our sources gives you those tools.
It really does.
Which does leave us with a final thought to maybe Taiwan. If expressing opinions politely is often described as tricky, like the source material says,
Yeah.
what is that complexity, the fact that we need these specific strategies? Tell us about the value we place on choosing our words carefully, about the effort involved in really sharing our thoughts effectively with others.
Something to ponder, for sure. Okay, so let's dive into this. We've got this material you shared, all looking at, well, expressing opinions in English more effectively.
Yeah, and our kind of mission here is to pull out the really valuable bits on making your opinions hit harder based on what these sources say.
Right. And what jumped out, really, is how they focus on something that sounds almost too simple.
Exactly. It's this idea that just adding a reason makes your opinion significantly stronger. That's the core theme.
Adding a why, it seems obvious maybe, but these sources really underline it. They say it's key for like conviction and clarity. Why such a big deal about just one thing?
Well, the sources imply that when you add that reason, you're not just stating how you feel anymore. You're, showing your work.
Ah, okay. Providing context.
Precisely. It gives your opinion substance, makes it easier for someone to grasp why you hold that view. It moves it from just an assertion to something more considered.
Gotcha. Puts a foundation under it. So, okay, adding the reason is vital. How do the sources suggest we actually, do that? What phrases do they give us?
They actually point to 3 very common, very useful phrases. Your connectors, basically.
Okay.
They are because, that's why, and the reason is.
Simple tools. Let's see how they work. The sources gave examples, didn't they?
They did. For because, the example is, I think English is important because it's used worldwide. See? Opinion first, then because, then the reason. Direct.
Makes sense. Clear. And that's why. How did that one look?
The example was, I believe in daily practice. That's why I study 30 minutes every day. So here, the belief or the principle comes first.
Right, the general idea.
And then that's why it links it to the specific action or consequence that supports it. It's like the evidence for the belief.
Okay, linking the abstract to the concrete. I see. And the last one, the reason is?
For that, the source used. The reason I prefer reading is that I learn new words. It kind of flips the structure a bit.
Also.
You sort of announce the reason is coming first with, the reason is?
Yeah.
And then you state it. It explains the preference you just mentioned or implied.
Interesting. So different ways to structure it, because after, that's why, connecting principle to action, or the reason is up front, but they all achieve the same goal.
Exactly. They all provide that crucial backing for your statement.
And the point isn't just to know these exist, right? It's about actually using them.
Absolutely. These sources present them as templates for you. Take your own opinions, whatever they are, and try slotting them in. I find this project tricky because the deadline is tight.
Or we value teamwork. That's why we have daily check-ins.
Perfect. Or the reason I chose this path is that it aligns with my skills. It just instantly adds that layer of explanation.
It's a small grammatical step, but according to this material, it makes a big difference in how clear and convincing you sound. That why is the key.
It gives your words grounding, yeah.
So to wrap up the main point from these sources, strengthen your opinions by adding a reason. And your main tools for doing that are those phrases, because, that's why, and the reason is.
That's the essence of it. Simple, intentional communication.
Right. And, here's a final thought to chew on. Something maybe beyond just communicating with others.
Oh?
What if you started consciously adding reasons, even just inside your own head? When you form an opinion, you pause and actually articulate the why to yourself.
Interesting. Like solidifying your own thoughts.
Exactly. Could that deliberate act of finding the reason actually sharpen your own understanding and conviction? Something to consider. Next time you form an opinion, what reason will you give it? Looking at expressing opinions in English specifically, agreeing and disagreeing.
And we've got some source material that really zeroes in on this, particularly how people manage these conversations with what it calls real balance.
Real balance. Okay, so our mission here is basically to unpack how you can confidently share your thoughts in English.
Exactly. Taking lessons from the examples in the material. It's not just about stating your view, but, managing that back and forth.
And the source gives us a pretty simple, relatable scenario to see this in action.
Yeah, it does. It pictures 3 people, Ollie, Zara, and Kwame. And they're just talking about the best time to study. Like, when is peak study time?
Okay, simple topic. So Ollie picks it off.
Yep. Ollie states his opinion, pretty directly, in my opinion, early morning is the best time to study.
Straightforward. Okay. And Zara, what's her take?
Zara is in full agreement. She says, I agree. I feel fresh in the morning. So she echoes it, adds her own reason. Simple, clear agreement there.
Right. So far, so easy. But then Kwame comes in, and this is where the balance part shows up, I guess.
Precisely. Kwame has a different view, but notice how he says it. He doesn't just jump in with, no, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I see your point, but I study at night. It's quieter.
Ah, okay. I see your point, but that little phrase does a lot of work, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
It's not just disagreeing. It's acknowledging the other person's perspective first. It shows you've heard them.
Yeah, it signals respect, like, okay, I get where you're coming from, and here's my different thought.
Exactly. And the material points this out, saying, now that's how people talk real opinions, real balance.
Right.
It's about adding your view, not necessarily knocking theirs down.
Like building on the conversation instead of, I don't know, demolishing someone else's point.
That's a good way to put it. It avoids that kind of conversational clash.
Which is really important, especially if you're maybe feeling a bit shy or hesitant about speaking up in English, right? You worry about phrasing or maybe offending someone.
Definitely. And the source material kind of anticipates that feeling. The bigger message here, the core idea, is powerful. Your opinion matters.
Right. Your thoughts are unique, they have value.
And expressing them clearly in English with this kind of balance is important because, as the source puts it, the world listens.
The world listens. I like that. It's not just about grammar. It's about having your unique input heard.
It suggests that a well-expressed opinion, one that shows that balance and respect, actually carries more weight. It's more likely to be considered.
Okay, so pulling this together then, what's the practical advice from the source for actually doing this, for speaking up?
It boils down to this. Don't be afraid, obviously, but focus on the how. Speak politely, speak clearly, speak proudly.
Politely, clearly, proudly. Okay, let's break that down. Politely links back to that balance, right?
Yeah.
Acknowledging others.
Exactly. Clearly is about making sure your actual thought, your unique point, comes across without confusion.
And proudly. That's not about being arrogant, is it?
No, not at all. It's more like having the quiet confidence that your perspective is worth adding to the conversation, that your voice deserves to be there, even if it's different. It underpins that real balance.
Got it. So it connects what you're saying with how you deliver it.
Perfectly put.
So wrapping up this deep dive then, learning to agree and disagree effectively in English, finding that real balance the source talks about, it's really about being thoughtful.
Polite, clear, and sort of quietly confident in your own voice.
Okay, so final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about that idea that the world listens when you express yourself clearly and with balance.
What unique opinion, what thought do you feel is most important for you to share today? Maybe it's agreeing strongly, or maybe it's offering that different perspective politely, clearly, and proudly. What needs adding to the conversation?
At some source material that, well, it really zeroes in on a powerful idea, actually. Simple, practical ways to just get comfortable expressing your opinions in English.
Right. And the mission here, based on this source, it isn't about complex theory, is it?
No, not at all. It seems to be about getting straight to the doing.
Exactly. Like practicing with very direct questions.
What's kind of fascinating is how the source just cuts through the complexity.
Yeah, it suggests that building this skill, it starts with the basics. Forming an opinion, any opinion really, and just voicing it.
Using straightforward prompts and these key phrases it highlights.
It really strips it back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Simplicity seems to be the path forward, according to this.
Okay, so how does the source suggest we actually do this then?
Well, it gives concrete examples. It starts with 3 specific questions, really designed for practice.
Right, because just staring at a blank page, that can be intimidating, you know?
Totally. So providing specific questions gives a clear starting point. The first one is pretty personal, quite low stakes. Do you like reading books?
And the source doesn't just pose the question, does it? It suggests a simple answer structure.
Exactly. It highlights these crucial phrases, like the example answer, yes, I think reading helps improve vocabulary.
Ah, okay. So the source points specifically to, I think?
Yep. Presented as like a fundamental building block, a way to signal, hey, this is my opinion.
Gotcha. So moving from that personal preference, the source then brings up something a bit more maybe societal.
Yeah, something more open to debate. Should students wear uniforms?
Okay. And how does the source handle that one? Does it show more nuance?
It does, actually. The example answer it gives is, I'm not sure. I believe it depends on the school.
Oh, interesting. So it's showing uncertainty combined with a conditional belief.
Precisely. It identifies, I'm not sure, as a way to express that uncertainty, but then you add, I believe, to state a kind of, qualified conviction.
So expressing an opinion isn't always just yes or no. It can involve acknowledging complexity.
That seems to be the point, yeah. And then the third practice question, it shifts again.
To something pretty contemporary, right? Lots of people have thoughts on this.
Definitely. Is it better to work from home or in an office?
And the example for that?
Again, simple, very direct. In my opinion, working from home saves time.
And there's that other key phrase the source emphasizes, in my opinion.
That's the third one it highlights.
So if we look at these examples together, I think, I'm not sure, I believe, in my opinion, the source seems to be laying out a specific method, doesn't it?
It looks like it. Start with clear questions, personal, societal, contemporary.
And then focus on using these, quite simple and direct phrases to frame your answer.
Right. And connecting this to the bigger picture, the source's insight seems to be that the real value is in the regular practice of this simple structure.
It's not about mastering complex grammar right away.
Apparently not. It's more about getting into the habit. Having a thought, choosing a phrase to signal it's your viewpoint, and then just articulating it.
The simplicity is actually the key, according to the source. It removes barriers to just, starting.
Makes sense. And, the source material makes it clear this isn't just about language mechanics either.
Oh, how so?
Well, after presenting these practice questions and the phrases, it offers this quite powerful concluding thought.
Which is?
That's how you grow.
Ah, okay, that's interesting. It directly links this simple practice to growth.
Exactly. Which kind of raises an important question drawn right from the source for you, the listener, to consider.
What does the source really mean by connecting this very simple act of forming and expressing an opinion on basic topics, liking books, where you work, directly to personal growth?
Well, according to the source, the process itself, clarifying your thoughts, deciding how to phrase them with these simple tools, voicing them, it's presented as more than just language practice.
It's framed as fundamental step.
Yeah, a fundamental step in building confidence and, importantly, gaining clarity about your own viewpoint.
So think about what that implies. The simple act of saying, I think, or in my opinion, in the source's view, that's actually a direct path to developing yourself, a way to grow.
That's all for episode 41, Expressing Opinions in English. You've learned how to say what you think, agree and disagree politely, add reasons, respect others' views. In our next episode, we'll talk about making plans and future intentions in English. A super useful skill for daily life and business. This is your host from SpeakNest English Podcast Zone, reminding you to speak with heart and grow with every word.